When my husband went on vacation with his family and left me behind, I thought it was just another example of their tight-knit bond. But when my mother-in-law reached out to me with unexpected news, I discovered the shocking reason why I wasn't invited, and it changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Subscribe to Stories Unfolded for more gripping tales of love, betrayal, and life-changing moments. You won't believe the twist in this story. When I married Chris 3 years ago, I thought I was marrying not just the love of my life, but also into a family that genuinely welcomed me. Chris was everything I had dreamed of in a partner: thoughtful, ambitious, and charming. His family, particularly his mother Linda, had been kind and warm during our engagement, making me feel like I was truly one of them. But as the honeymoon phase of our marriage faded, subtle cracks began to show. Chris's family was close. Too close, if I was being honest. They had their own traditions, inside jokes, and unspoken rules that I could never quite keep up with. Whenever we visited them, I felt like an outsider looking in, no matter how hard I tried to fit in. Chris would often tell me not to take it personally. "It's just the way they are," he'd say. "They take time to warm up." Still, there were moments that stung, like the time his sister, Rachel, commented on how I wasn't the type Chris usually dated, or when his brother Tom joked about how Chris must have been really serious about me to marry someone so different from their family dynamic. Chris always brushed these things off, and I told myself I was just overthinking. But then came the family vacation, the moment that shattered my illusions about where I stood in his life and theirs. It started innocently enough, over dinner one evening. Chris casually mentioned that his family was planning their annual vacation, a week-long getaway to a luxury cabin in the mountains. "That sounds amazing," I said, smiling at him. "When are we going?" Chris hesitated, his fork pausing mid-air. About that," he said, avoiding my gaze. "It's kind of a family-only thing this year." I blinked, confused. "Aren't I part of the family?" "Of course you are," he said quickly. "But this is like, just the immediate family. My parents, Rachel, Tom. It's something we've been doing since we were kids. It's a tradition." I tried to keep my voice steady. "So I'm not invited?" "It's not about that," he said, his tone defensive. "It's just how we've always done it. I don't want to mess with the dynamic." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Mess with the dynamic?" I repeated. "Chris, we're married. How am I supposed to feel about being excluded like this?" "You're making this a bigger deal than it is," he said, clearly growing frustrated. "It's just one trip. You'll have the whole house to yourself. Think of it as a chance to relax." In the days leading up to the trip, the tension between us was palpable. Chris was busy packing and talking excitedly about the plans he and his family had made, while I tried to hide the hurt I felt. I confided in my best friend Maya, who was just as shocked as I was. "That's not normal," she said firmly. "You're his wife. You should be part of the family traditions." "I know," I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "But what can I do? He doesn't see a problem with it, and if I push, I'll just seem needy." Maya shook her head. "It's not needy to want to be included in your own husband's life. You deserve better than this." Her words stayed with me as I watched Chris leave for the airport that Friday morning. He kissed me goodbye, telling me he'd call when he arrived, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. As the door closed behind him, I felt a wave of loneliness and frustration wash over me. 2 days into the trip, I was sitting in the living room, scrolling mindlessly through social media, when my phone buzzed. It was a call from Linda, my mother-in-law. I hesitated before answering, unsure of what to expect. "Hello?" "Hi, sweetie," Linda said, her voice warm but hesitant. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "No, not at all," I replied. "What's up?" There was a brief pause before she spoke again. "I wanted to check in on you," she said. "I know you must be feeling a little left out with Chris being away." Her words caught me off guard. "It's fine," I said quickly, trying to sound nonchalant. "Listen," Linda continued, her tone softening. "I need to tell you something, and I hope you won't take it the wrong way. I know Chris said this trip was about family tradition, but that's not the whole truth." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" There was another pause, as if she was choosing her words carefully. "Rachel and Tom, they weren't comfortable with you coming," she admitted. "They told Chris they thought it would change the dynamic too much, and he didn't want to cause a fight. So he agreed." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. "They didn't want me there," I whispered, my voice shaking. "It's not about you, sweetie," Linda said quickly. "It's just, they're set in their ways. But for what it's worth, I think they're being ridiculous. You're part of this family now, and you deserve to be treated like it." I hung up the phone with Linda, my hands trembling as her words echoed in my mind. They didn't want me there. They thought I would change the dynamic. No matter how much Linda tried to soften the blow, the reality stung. Rachel and Tom didn't see me as part of the family. Not really. And worse, Chris hadn't stood up for me. The betrayal felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I thought back to all the little moments I had brushed off, the subtle comments, the forced smiles during family gatherings. Now, it all made sense. But what hurt the most wasn't Rachel and Tom's exclusion. It was Chris's silence. He had chosen to go along with them instead of standing by me, his wife. That evening, I decided I couldn't wait for Chris to come home to address this. I called him, my heart pounding, as the phone rang. "Hey, babe," he said cheerfully when he picked up. "How's everything going?" "Cut the small talk, Chris," I said, my voice sharp. "I just got off the phone with your mom. She told me the real reason I wasn't invited on this trip." There was a long pause. She told you?" he said finally, his tone uneasy. "Yeah, she did," I snapped. "And now I want to hear it from you. Did Rachel and Tom say they didn't want me there?" Chris sighed heavily. "Look, it's not as bad as it sounds." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice trembling with anger. "Don't try to downplay this. Did they or did they not say they didn't want me there?" "Yes," he admitted reluctantly. "But it wasn't personal, okay? They have their traditions, and they were worried it would feel different with you there." "Not personal?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Chris, they excluded me because they don't see me as part of the family. How is that not personal?" "I was trying to keep the peace," Chris said, his tone defensive. "If I pushed back, it would have caused a huge fight, and I didn't want to deal with that." "So you decided it was easier to throw me under the bus?" I shot back. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? Your siblings don't respect me, and instead of standing up for me, you went along with it." "It's not like that," Chris said, his voice wavering. "I love you. You know that. This trip doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," I said, my voice breaking. "You let them treat me like I don't matter. You didn't even think I deserved to know the truth. You lied to me, Chris. How am I supposed to trust you after this?" Chris was silent for a long moment. "I didn't handle this the right way," he said finally. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have stood up for you. I know I screwed up, but please don't let this ruin us. I'll fix it. I swear. I took a deep breath, my emotions swirling between anger, sadness, and disappointment. You say you'll fix it, but I need more than words, Chris. I need to see that you're willing to fight for me. Because right now, it feels like you're more worried about keeping your siblings happy than keeping your wife happy. I'll talk to them, Chris said quickly. When I get back, I'll sit them down and make it clear that this can't happen again. You're my wife, and you deserve respect. You should have done that from the start, I said quietly. I know, he replied, his voice heavy with regret. I'll do better. I promise. True to his word, Chris called a family meeting the day after he returned home. I reluctantly agreed to go with him, though I was nervous about how it would play out. Rachel and Tom were clearly caught off guard when Chris brought up the topic. What's this about? Rachel asked, crossing her arms. This is about how you treated my wife, Chris said firmly. You made her feel unwelcome on the family trip, and that's not okay. Tom rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. It wasn't a big deal. We just wanted to keep things the way they've always been. It is a big deal, Chris shot back. You don't get to exclude my wife because you're too stuck in your traditions to accept change. She's part of this family now, whether you like it or not. Rachel frowned, looking uncomfortable. We didn't mean to hurt anyone, she said. We just thought it would be easier. Easier for who? I asked, speaking up for the first time. Because it certainly wasn't easier for me to be left behind and lied to. By the end of the conversation, Rachel and Tom apologized, though their apologies felt more obligatory than heartfelt. Still, it was a step forward, and Chris assured me he would continue to set boundaries with them moving forward. It wasn't an easy road, but over time, Chris began to prove that he was serious about putting me first. He became more vocal in defending me during family gatherings, and he even went out of his way to plan a special trip for just the two of us, a gesture that helped rebuild some of the trust I had lost. This experience taught me that love alone isn't enough to make a marriage work. Respect and boundaries are just as important, and they have to come from both partners. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories Unfolded. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And remember, true family includes the people who make you feel like you belong.